Hey everyone, this is Pause or Repeat. Here we figure out whether a game is really worth your time and money. Today's game is Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Armored Core 6 is Fromsoftware's chance to revive their old mech game series. It is a series that hasn't been touched since 2013, and as such, it is a bit of a risk to bring it back. Not to mention that the mech game genre hasn't been popular for a while, industry-wide. But is Fromsoftware successful in the revival of the series? To take a look at that, let's look at the gameplay. The gameplay of Armored Core 6 involves piloting a mech called an Armored Core, or AC, into war zones and battlefields. There is a lot of mech combat, as you could imagine, but the real draw is that the game gives you countless ways to customize your AC. The customization ranges from paint jobs and decals, to changing out for different weapons and individual parts of your AC. The way you customize your AC will determine your playstyle. If you want to have tank treads with Gatling guns, you can do that. Or you can be really fast with melee weapons, for example. The possibilities are great, but some missions will cater to different playstyles, and the game encourages you to experiment with different AC builds. Now, how about the story? The story of Armored Core 6 is a little complicated. Your character is an augmented human taken out of stasis to pilot an AC and make a name for yourself on the planet Rubicon as an independent mercenary. You will receive work mostly from either the Balaam Group or the Arquebus Corporation, two corporations who have a foothold on Rubicon. The reason you are all there, however, is because of Coral, a mysterious energy source with seemingly limitless potential. The story starts a little slow, but begins to pick up after a couple of chapters. The game also has 3 separate endings to achieve, each with their own specific missions. Depending on how much difficulty the game's bosses give you, it could take you longer than other people. But now the question still stands. Pause or repeat? Man, what a fun game this was. I actually forgot how much I actually enjoy mechs as a whole genre as it is. And playing through this game, I was like, man, this is at first I was like, oh, this is really floaty, really weird. But once you adjusted to it, I was like, man, this is really fun. I'm really having a good time here. And I kept seeing all these people saying like, oh man, this game is way too hard, way overtuned.
Oh, don't you go there. Don't you go there.
And I was just like, yeah, it's a little hard. I could see that. But, I think that once you get over the hump of figuring out how the game is and you kind of get a little accustomed to it, it actually is not so much difficult. It's just a matter of planning your builds, your AC builds properly. And then everything just becomes kind of easy at that point, in my opinion, at least. But I don't know how you feel about that. I know you've had some opinions when we first talked about it.
We don't even have any merch for Rage Quit yet, but you're giving me so many ideas. We're going to have to give you your own specialized shirt, and because you say this all the time on Rage Quit, sounds like a skill issue. That's literally going to be on the shirt. It's just, this game, it definitely does have what people like you referencing right now, these skill-based bosses, and I think that's really meant for is because they really want you to utilize all the assets that are provided for you to build upon your mech, which is cool. But then at the same time, some people like myself like to live the simple life, and we like to roll with what we like. This game does not provide that for you. I know you did kind of tackle on in your amazing video as always about the story mode behind this game. I don't know about you. Were you vibing with it? Because I wasn't necessarily in favor of the whole idea about, audio dialogues, these PowerPoint presentations for combat briefings, and then, a little bit of combat chatter as you're playing the game. It kind of felt like something that an indie developer would do, not a AAA game, because it worked for Days Gone because, you always wanted to kind of get that mysterious, kind of vibes about where did those people go, during the whole zombie apocalypse. With this game, I don't know. I kind of wanted something more. Did you feel the same way as I felt?
Well, here's the thing. I feel like I understand what you're saying because I too was kind of like, oh, okay, Fromsoftware is known for the Elden Ring kind of style of storytelling, and this is a completely different approach to storytelling where it's just mission based and you don't ever see anyone outside of their mechs. So you only ever see mechs or other vehicles essentially. And then you do have those, like you said, PowerPoint presentations. I think that what I'm seeing is that from software, they're taking the chance of reviving this series. So they probably didn't give that much budget to actually reviving the series. Enough to put in good gameplay, a couple cutscenes here and there. But I think that they kind of wanted to gauge what people were feeling like about this genre again. Whether they enjoyed it or not, and if they make a sequel, which they probably will, based on the success of this. With the sales numbers and the hype and everything. I think they'll make a sequel and they'll put more budget into that one of like making cutscenes and everything. But I will say, even without any like fully fledged cutscenes like you're thinking, there are still some really cinematic moments in like boss fights and things
True.
like that where it's like, oh man, like this is you feel like the scale of what's going on completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's visually stunning. And don't get me wrong, I mean, controlling the mech is very easy to learn quickly, which I really liked a lot, and I think that's what's going to possibly entice gamers to want to kind of come in, but I don't feel like it's for everyone. I mean, myself personally, it wasn't really a game for me. I'm not necessarily high on it, but I know some, longtime hardcore fans are a little upset that there wasn't like a hard lock on systems because it kind of lowers the skill settings. I mean, did you feel that same vibe? Because I know you've been riding with Armored Core for a while, unlike myself. So I'm kind of like brand new to the franchise. And for myself, trying to be a new gamer, trying to feel this game out, it didn't necessarily stick with me. I mean, especially when you get like they try to get into the multiplayer, route, right? You can go one-on-one with like certain people. I feel like they didn't even need to do that. I mean, that's kind of boring after like 2 hours. So
That's kind of them giving a little bit more content because they already did that with some of the Souls-like games.
yeah,
They were kind of like, let's add some multiplayer in here as well, and it actually lets you kind of experiment with different AC builds as well. Because here's the thing: the game once you unlock certain weapons and equipment, the game becomes a cakewalk. Like
yeah.
you could literally run around with two shotguns and these big cannons, and every boss just dies like within a minute or two. So the game is really not that hard once you get to that point. It's really like all the way up until chapter two,
You
probably.
say that, but then last month, and we even explored it, where people were struggling just on the first boss alone. Some people spent 4 hours. I mean, that would be something that would draw me out, but that's why I'm kind of like on the edge of a pause and a little bit leaning towards a repeat. And the only reason I'm saying a repeat is I love the idea with games where they have like the game plus or like the story plus, where like all those perks that you earned as you played during your first venture, that all comes with you if you want to replay the game. And that's what made the experience, in my personal opinion, more exciting. But then again, I don't know how else the gamers feel about it. So,
Well, I mean, you bring up New Game Plus, and there is a New Game Plus Plus as well. And that is why, for me, it was a definite repeat because not only do you get to take everything from your first playthrough into your second and third playthrough, but you get more equipment unlocks in your second and third playthrough that are actually more interesting and more fun, more challenging encounters, and then also different bosses. And
yeah,
I mean, I did say, the game does kind of become a cakewalk after like chapter two of the first playthrough. But that's only if you play with like the meta weapon selection. Like you can choose basically whatever you want at that point. And as long as you're good at the game, you can actually survive any encounter because the game does want you to do certain things a certain way. And there was a couple missions where I was like, okay, I got to change out my mech because otherwise I'm not going to have a good time with this one.
well, I think that's why
But
they implemented the
you
skill-based
can,
bosses, right? So you have
yeah,
to use all the assets. And I think at first, I don't think gamers really realized that. They just wanted to trash the game in the first 48 hours. But then when you see, even in your amazing video, you show it. There's like a long menu. There's so many different weapon choices that you can put on your mech. That's the cool part. So they don't want you like sleeping on one style. I mean, that's what would make the game lame on a level.
Yeah, exactly. Like you really should be experimenting, and I've seen tons of builds out there that are even not just the meta, but are still really broken and busted, whether it be in the 1v1 or even in the story mode. So you can just
Yeah,
have a lot of fun, but maybe like you said, it's not for everyone because you got to think a little bit about what you're doing.
yeah, very true. And I, as much as I was kind of leaning, pause and a little bit on repeat, I will give it a repeat. I definitely feel like, when you play it the second time around with all your perks, you're definitely going to love this game. But on a final note, because I'm very curious, I want to know your opinion on this because things are really ramping up when it comes to the year 2023. Like we talked about last week, some people are comparing it to 2007, one of the greatest years in video games. Will this game hold up as game of the year?
I don't think it'll hold up as game of the year. It might be nominated, but I don't think it's going to win,
Yeah,
considering there's plenty of other titles as well that came out this
Zelda,
year.
Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah,
I
and
think those are
those,
still the top two right now.
yeah, even like Zelda, for example, like that was probably more accessible to people, and that
Yeah.
in itself is going to make it have more attention than this one. Aside from the attention that this one got, where people were just raging against the game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But hey, you guys heard from us. We're both on the same agreement. I don't know why we keep doing this.